We are dedicated to building community, providing educational events, support groups, and developing research projects related to effective, responsible, and safe use of psychedelic medicines. None of our platforms are to be used to provide or source illegal substances. The opinions and information provided by participants and presenters is for informational purposes only. It is not advice, medical or otherwise. Attendees are responsible for their own decisions. We do encourage our members to become involved with our community by making direct connections with each other, actively participating in events, and to consider volunteer opportunities. At this point, the Portland Psychedelic Society would like to pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, who stewarded this land throughout generations. Portland rests on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Klamath, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Malala, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. For more information about the indigenous people of respects to the elders, both past and present, please go to NAIA PDX. All right. Certified executive coach and international speaker on neuroscience and leadership. She holds a master's in organizational development from John F. Kennedy University, and I highly recommend her TEDx talk on what the dying can teach the living. She is the principal of Positive Results, where she uses her skills to transform consciousness in individuals and organizations. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right on. Our host, Dr. David Jackson, received his BSEE from Rice University with a focus in biomedical engineering, as well as an MD at Southwestern Medical School in Dallas. Through a long career in medicine and medical engineering, he observed the failures of our traditional cultural lifestyles and the healthcare industry to provide people with enduring wellness and life satisfaction. With further training in functional medicine and the demand to solve these problems among family and friends, David researched the safe and effective use of non-traditional medicines and therapies for general mental wellness and the treatment of addiction. His current focus is on extricating patients from the slew of wildly popular serotonergic transport inhibitors, which led him to team up with Teresa this past year, using her skills as a speaker and professional business coach, as well as her deep insights into consciousness. Together with the psychedelic community, they're engaged in spreading their insights to both the public and the medical community. Welcome, David. Thank you for being here. I don't know, he may not be able to hear me. Anyway, I'll put the links in the chat to everything mentioned above.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm good now.
Oh, okay. That's David.
That's me. Okay, appreciate it.
After the presentation, there will be a Q&A with David and Teresa. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Teresa.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Can everybody hear me really well? Great.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here talking about one of my favorite subjects, how to hack your simulated reality. There are three questions most of us ask ourselves at various points in our life. Science, religion, philosophy, and psychology have all offered answers to these questions. And these questions are, What is the meaning of life? And by meaning, I mean I'm referencing the intention or reason for doing something. The second question is, what is the purpose of life? And by purpose, I'm referencing the fulfillment or consummation of the meaning. And the third question is, for doing something, what happens when I die? This question addresses if the soul persists after the death of the body. And these questions can take on a different significance at different points in our life. If we have a career that fulfills us and a partner or family, we may feel we know our purpose or we know what makes life meaningful. But if all that comes crashing down or ceases to fulfill us, then these nagging questions come back to haunt us again. In fact, the typical person ponders these questions at different points in their life, and the higher one's conscious awareness, the more the search for these answers. As an example, the Buddha was born into royalty. He married, he had a child, but he left all of that and he spent 6 years fasting and meditating until he determined the meaning of life, the purpose of life, and what happens when we die. As a coach, these questions have perplexed just about everyone I've worked with, including myself, my family, and my friends. So how are we to answer these questions? First, it's helpful to realize that you're living in a simulated reality, not entirely of your own making. You might be asking, well, whose making is it? This simulated reality is heavily influenced by the norms and expectations of our family, our society, our education, and our religion. If you consider evolutionary game theory, which states we are seeing none of the reality, we only see the user interface. This enables us to affect our reality even though we're ignorant of its true nature. What is the true nature of reality? In a video game, we see and interact with what's being shown on the screen. But behind the screen, there are all these circuits and software that allow you to look into the source code of the game. Somewhat like peeking behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. It's not exactly what we are expecting, and it's the same with reality. This is where psychedelics can be very instrumental in tweaking our interface and exposing more of the source code of our programming. Under psychedelics, we can apprehend deeper and wider layers of reality. We create our simulated reality with our consciousness, not our brain. Much like a video game, the monitor or headset does not create the game you are playing. It is merely the receiver of electrical signals and programs. Our brain holds the programming and is merely the electrical receiver of consciousness. If you don't believe me, just tell me what your next thought will be. The key to expanded consciousness is to understand the source code of our programming. To understand the source code of our programming, it's helpful to know what goes into determining or developing the source code. To play any game well, video or not, one must know the rules to the game. How many of us feel that we know the rules to the game of life? By rules, I mean universal laws. Universal laws are those that apply to all phenomena universally. These laws are constant, mathematically precise, and govern all aspects of creation. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on 4 universal laws, even with science, and have been known in spiritual traditions for thousands of years. The first universal law to this game of life is the law of oneness. Everything arises from a single source. The concept of singularity is true. As Rumi says, you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a drop. Though our individual forms come and go like waves in the ocean, we are each and all the eternal ocean of consciousness. All consciousness is interconnected and affects everything in existence. The entire universe is an undivided, holographic, unified whole. Albert Einstein said we experience ourselves, our thoughts and our feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. I'd like to share my entire ocean experience. My first time taking San Pedro cactus was in Peru. The shaman that performed the ceremony was also a palm reader, and he asked if he could read my palm. I displayed my hand, and he looked at it very deeply and said, "I can see that you are very spiritual." I said, "Well, I guess that depends on what you mean by spiritual. He told me I had lost my way, but that today I would see God. He was right. During my mescaline experience, I merged with God, source, oneness, the unified field, whatever you want to call it, but it was an absolutely profound experience. It completely changed, as Einstein said, my optical delusion of consciousness. The second law to this game of life is the law of vibration. Albert Einstein said, everything in life is vibration. The universe is made up of molecules vibrating at different speeds. This includes rocks, trees, animals, brain cells, heart cells, thoughts, and emotions. Some molecules vibrate faster, while others vibrate slower. Research conducted by Dr. David Hawkins, a physician and psychiatrist, was able to map the vibrational frequencies of certain thoughts and emotions. As you can see from this chart, high vibratory frequencies like love, joy, and peace enable one to manifest quickly, whereas low vibratory frequencies like grief, fear, or anger cause slow or low manifestation of energy. Manifestation means bringing matter into existence from non-matter or form into existence from the formless. Chakras are energetic centers of the body, and each energy center has its own vibrational frequency. The higher the vibrational frequency, the more expanded the consciousness. The lower the frequency, the more contracted the consciousness. In 2001, Dr. Winkelman conducted the first fMRI study on psychedelics and chakra activation. In 2006, Dr. Nichols' study revealed ketamine's effect on the crown chakra. This slide shows which substances affect our energetic centers. The base or the root chakra is most affected by substances like opioids, kratom, heroin, and morphine. Alcohol affects the second energy center, or the sacral chakra. Caffeine and stimulants affect the third or solar plexus chakra. This would also include amphetamines and cocaine. The fourth energy center is also known as the heart chakra and is considered the beginning of the higher vibrational centers. This center is affected by cannabis and MDMA. The fifth chakra, or throat chakra, is affected by mescaline. The sixth energetic center, which is also known as the third eye, is affected by psilocybin, ibogaine, and LSD. The crown chakra is associated with cosmic consciousness and is most affected by DMT in all of its forms and ketamine. Gamma brainwave states, those shown at the top of this chart, are considered to be the brain's optimal frequency and are associated with unity consciousness, supermemory recall, intuition, strong feelings of love and peace. Advanced meditators, near-death experiencers, breathwork, and certain psychedelics enable these gamma brainwave states. This may explain why near-death experiencers who had a life review experience, which not all near-death experiences include a life review, have such high memory recall of their experience. These experiences include seeing past lives, other dimensions, and future events. In fact, many near-death experiencers give vivid descriptions of people in their hospital room, comments said, and actions taken. They describe who they met, portals they traversed, and many relate feelings of joy, peace, and love. In 2019, a study conducted by the Brain and Spine Institute in Paris, France, published by the Journal of Consciousness and Cognition, examined more than 15,000 reports of near-death experiences and compared them with 165 psychoactive substances. Then they used algorithms to compare how close psychoactive substances mirror near-death experiences. The report indicated that while mushrooms and LSD rated moderately high on the list, they didn't even come close to ketamine, which ranked number 1, followed by salvia divinorum and then DMT. This is because LSD and psilocybin increase theta brainwaves, not gamma waves. What this study revealed is that near-death experiences were not stimulated only by DMT, as previously thought. Increased gamma brainwave frequencies are associated with both DMT and ketamine. There isn't much research on salvia divinorum at this time in brainwave states. Many psychedelic users of ayahuasca, NMDMT, 5-MeO-DMT, and ketamine have similar experiences and states of consciousness. Gamma brainwaves also naturally upregulate DMT in the brain. Since DMT is a powerful hallucinogen that's naturally endogenous to the body, could that mean our waking perception of reality is inherently illusory? If reality is indeed some form of hallucination, then perhaps the visions reported from near-death experiences and psychedelic experiences are as real as anything we perceive in a down-regulated mode of our day-to-day perception. Remember, reality is typically described as the illusions that we can all agree on. The gamma brainwave state is also considered a natural antidepressant. This explains ketamine's newfound use for treating depression. Teaming up with Dr. David Jackson, an anesthesiologist who works with ketamine and uses EEG regularly, we wanted to determine the optimal dosing to achieve gamma brainwave states. Ketamine has a wide range of dosing options, and ketamine affects everyone differently. Excessive doses can result in a blackout, which obviously lowers any recall and other possible side effects like sleepiness and nausea. Lower doses can be subtherapeutic and not enable gamma brainwave states. Dr. Jackson uses medical EEG monitoring to determine the optimal dosing, whether through infusion or through a subcutaneous injection. I've been fortunate to have a large dose ketamine experience that I'd like to share with you. A shout out to David for making that fantastic video. Well, that smile on my face should say it all, but I'm going to give you a little bit more detail. During this experience, I was quickly transported to a fictitious place that was made to seem real. The floor was appearing before me as I was walking along a corridor with my guide, whose head and glasses looked similar to the cartoon character Dilbert, except that he had square glasses on. He had a pink shirt and celadon colored pants. I asked him questions and he would sweep open pillowed walls, also the color of celadon. I got to see the answers, but he also helped me understand what I was seeing. I asked him, why was everything so challenging in the third dimension, and what were different dimensions like? He swept a pillowed wall, and I saw two women floating horizontally about 4 feet off the ground, facing one another. They were floating in a beautiful garden with butterflies and a lovely outdoor table and chairs with breakfast on the table. My guide told me this is the peace world. Telepathically, I heard their conversation. They were complaining about another day in paradise. One woman said to the other, "Don't you get sick of the perfect weather, the perfect food, the absolutely perfect everything all the time?" And the other woman replied, "Yes, it almost makes you want to go back to the war world." Perplexed, I turned back to my guide and said, "What is the war world?" He swept the pillowed wall on the other side of the corridor, and he showed me the war world. It looks something like this. I looked at my cartoon guide, horrified, and said, "Why would anyone want to go to the war world?" He told me, "Go down and see for yourself." I went down into the war world, and I saw the plight of people and mass destruction. He told me humans want and need all types of experiences to determine and develop who they are. When you are angry, this is what you want, and you can see how it affects people. When you have absolutely everything, you can see that sometimes, over time, it ceases to satisfy. He told me that consciousness is always changing to reflect our thoughts and our actions. I asked him, is there no permanent state of nirvana, heaven, or enlightenment? He told me consciousness is always evolving because consciousness is in a perpetual state of motion. This was a very profound revelation for me because I thought there was some ultimate destination to reach at some point. The third law to this game of life is the law of cause and effect. In Einstein's theory of relativity, causality means that an effect cannot occur from a cause that is not in the past. What does this mean in terms of consciousness? Whenever you act with intention, you create a cause and effect setup. Actions are considered to be thoughts, emotions, words, and deeds. While most of us would like to see our desires come to pass quickly, like planting wheatgrass, which we can usually harvest 10 days later, wouldn't it be great to grow your business to where you want it to be in 10 days, or meet the love of your life in that time frame? But what about other thoughts, like a desire for a competitor's business to fail, or the hope that a past lover has someone cheat on them, like they did on you? This is why the law of vibration is pivotal. The higher consciousness we vibrate at, the quicker the manifestation into matter. Thank goodness, higher consciousness deals with love, joy, and peace because manifestation at these levels of consciousness happens more quickly. For lower consciousness entities, I'm referencing myself here, cause and effect can take more time. In fact, it can take a lot of time, sometimes lifetimes. Have you ever wondered why bad things seem to happen to good people and why bad people don't seem to get their due? Universal law takes all of that into account. It can take an almond tree 10 years to produce its very first almond. Every day when we engage in this simulated reality called life, what causes do you want to engage in that at some point in time you will see the effects? If you think you can cut someone off in traffic, you absolutely can, but just try not to be shocked when that happens to you. Remember, since everything is oneness, what you do to others, you do to yourself. Part of the illusion of this simulated reality we live in is thinking that we are separate from one another. Your actions affect others just as their actions affect you. We live in this interconnected ocean of consciousness, and understanding the effects of your drops in the ocean sets up yours and others' future causality. Psychedelics, hypnosis, and meditation are excellent ways to experience our consciousness beyond our dimensions of space and time. Under both psychedelics and hypnosis, I was able to see past lives, which gave me tremendous insight into my current life. These insights helped me understand why I've experienced some of the things in my life that were not easily understood before. If I don't want my life to be Groundhog Day again, I learn from my experiences and I modify my actions. Nothing holds existence by itself, but is always transparent to the underlying matrix of cause and effect. The fourth rule to this game of life is the universal law of polarity. The law states that everything is on a continuum and has an opposite. We have positive and negative, male and female, matter and antimatter. We wouldn't know day if there wasn't night, winter versus summer, love versus hate. We interact with other consciousness agents to show us who we are, and we show others who they are. We know that ultimately consciousness is singularity, but in this dimension of time and space, we experience duality to understand our simulated reality. We've covered the four universal laws that govern this game of life, those being the law of oneness, the law of vibration, the law of cause and effect, and the law of polarity. What happens at the end of the game? In other words, what happens when we die? Scientists using quantum theory are now beginning to believe that death is no more than taking off the headset in a virtual reality game. When our body, or avatar, dies, our consciousness leaves its interface. The body was never the creator of consciousness in the first place. It is merely the interface or receiver of consciousness. Consciousness persists after the death of its interface. The level of consciousness achieved in this simulated reality primarily determines the next virtual reality game one gets to play. As in a video game, the more points acquired, the more options are available in the next game. For example, if you have $1 million to buy a house, you have far more options to choose from than if you only have $100,000 for a house. This also proves true in consciousness. Since it's been determined that there's an endless pool of consciousness agents and an infinite variety of structures, it is now provable that consciousness never ceases, much as I learned during my ketamine experience. The evidence that there are lower and higher level of consciousness agents could easily mean that lower consciousness agents may take on a lower interface in the next existence, and higher consciousness agents may take on a higher interface. Higher consciousness agents may be what some would call angels or spiritual guides or gods. Lower consciousness agents may be rocks, plants, or animals. One may take on a new virtual reality headset and return right here to Earth, but one may also take on an existence on other planets, galaxies, or dimensions. In this closed system we call the omniverse, matter is neither created nor destroyed, but simply changes form. So the big question you might want to ask yourself is, what do you want your next interface or form to be? This is where knowing the rules or the universal laws to the game of life is so important, because what you don't know does affect you. It is in the interaction of other consciousness agents that one derives new forms of consciousness. You might want to consider, how are you interacting with other consciousness agents? In quantum physics, if two particles are entangled, the second particle will reflect the properties of the first, regardless of their proximity. Entangled particles separated by billions of light years and the width of the entire universe remain entangled. Many people I've interacted with have told me after a mushroom or LSD trip, they experience a profound sense of love and empathy. Many regret how they've treated other consciousness agents, like former spouses, partners, children, siblings, co-workers, and friends. Love is high in the second universal law of vibration. When I was a hospice volunteer, I did a TEDx talk on what the dying can teach the living. I can tell you, no one ever said they wish that they would have worked more, but many told me they wish that they would have loved more and had better relationships. What isn't resolved in this interface existence will require resolution in some other interface, because light years of separation does not affect entanglement. One of the most powerful meditations I engage in monthly is a death meditation. I imagine if I were to leave this interface this year, what would I regret? This meditation enables one to realize in this dimension of time and space, you may not always have until tomorrow. Considering we reap what we sow, what are the seeds you are sowing? Because the harvest is coming. Meditation is a great way to reflect on our life's creations and see if we want to make any adjustments. A regular meditation practice increases gamma brainwave activity. Meditation builds the mind's capacity like exercise builds your muscle capacity. Exercising infrequently won't get you the body you desire, and it's the same with meditation. The ongoing practice of directing your attention and thoughts enables one to effectuate conscious evolution. Meditation is a powerful adjunct to psychedelics. Psychedelics can more readily expose our simulated reality, and meditation can give us the ongoing insight to determine if we want to change the simulation. Now back to my initial 3 questions. What is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is to create new forms of consciousness for ourselves and others. We show others who they are as we learn from others who we are. The law of polarity of our reality is that we need an opposite to understand it. We are here to create and destroy ways of being as we evolve in consciousness. And the second question, what is the purpose of life? The purpose of life is conscious evolution. Psychedelics, breathwork, meditation, and hypnosis can all give us insight into our simulated reality. By hacking our default mode, we can see and experience things more real than our simulation. Because of the law of cause and effect, changes in consciousness will go with you in your next interface. And the final question, what happens when we die? We take off one interface and we put on another. Do you want to put on the peace world interface or the war world interface? Of course, there's an infinite number of interfaces. I just gave 2 examples I've experienced in my psychedelic journeys. If you identify with Christianity, you may think of the peace world as heaven and the war world as hell. If you're a Buddhist, the war world would be a lower realm and the peace world would be a higher realm. Free will enables you to make choices from your previous game winnings or losses. The law of vibration states that the higher our vibration, the more free will we will have. Unfortunately, the opposite is also true. Regardless of what interface you put on, it will change because there is no end to consciousness. For me, one of the goals of using psychedelics, meditation, hypnosis, and breathwork is not so much altered states, but altered traits. If the underbelly of psychedelics is their temporary nature, how can we work with these temporary states in a way that will advance our consciousness? In this simulated reality, are we just the program, or can we be the hack? I ask you to reflect on how you will use psychedelics, meditation, hypnosis, and breathwork to hack your simulated reality and access or change your source code. Thank you all very much. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those now. I also have a slide that references some of the things I talked about in this talk.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. Wonderful.
All right. Looking forward to the questions. I have a little bit more housekeeping here. If you enjoyed the presentation and you feel moved to make a donation, you can do so through our website or directly through PayPal or Venmo. Finally, the Psychedelic Society loves volunteers. If you are willing, we have a place for you. Please visit our website and fill out a contact form. And all the donation and volunteer links will be in the chat. Same with the Indigenous peoples links that I promised to put up. All right, Jason and David.
Hey, thank you, Donna. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. Teresa, I've got a couple of questions. One came in from Ginger. Thought it might be appropriate for you to comment. Ginger says,
Hi, Ginger.
It seems presumptuous to me that animals are considered lower consciousness in light of recent animal studies that show how much more intelligent many animals are than we previously assumed. And in light of how much more present they appear to be than humans, could someone argue that they're more evolved? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've wondered the same things too, because I don't know if there's an octopus movie out on Netflix right now, and as somebody who's had dogs and pets, I look at an awful lot of things. They absolutely have, just because they don't maybe have the same communication standard, and there's certain things that they don't do, we really don't know their level of consciousness. Really what we're comparing it to is our level of consciousness. And so when I talk about it may be, a lot of scientific studies definitely relate it as such. I've had many conversations with people about this. I would have to agree with you. I feel like we don't know. So we really don't know what goes on. They are certainly sentient beings, and who knows, maybe they actually have higher consciousness than us. But I used it as an example because it's typically known in spiritual texts, especially if you believe in Hindu or Buddhist traditions. They think these are lower realms. When it comes to consciousness, I would just say there's not a lot of studies on that, but I completely understand your point.
Thank you. Very good. One more question here that I think I'll address comes from Keegan. Keegan states, how long is a high dose ketamine journey and when was ketamine discovered? Keegan, I'm going to flip something on here for you. One moment. And then don't want to get too far off, but let's see here. No, it's not coming through. Keegan, ketamine really came into its current use in the 70s, more or less. Years ago, and I believe it was in the 50s, PCP was developed, and PCP was originally developed for the same general purpose as a dissociative anesthetic, and it was actually used quite a bit. And it seems hard to imagine, but it's actually, from what I can tell, it's still actually a legal pharmaceutical, but I think it's rarely used. It was used frequently in veterinary medicine, but it had more stimulatory effects and more of the dysphoric side effects. So eventually, ketamine came into being, and it has far fewer dysphoric effects. But getting back to your question, it really depends on how the drug is administered. It can be given as an infusion, in which case, if you look at some pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic models, you can make it last just about as long as you want. But I would say for the purposes of bolus dose and initial subcutaneous dose, an IV infusion would last roughly 30 to 45 minutes, and a sub-Q dose roughly the same, but with different parameters. So that's probably about the best I can do to give, as far as giving you a general answer there, Keegan. Let's see.
I'm sorry, Jason, you're muted right now. I can
Oh,
now.
I'm hearing it. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, well, so since all consciousness is interconnected, it's all interconnected. So typically, we have all seen and experienced each other many times. Typically, people that are very close to you are really what we'd consider to be part of a soul group. Those would typically be your family, loved ones, close friends, people that are significant in your life. But really, everybody is interconnected. But typically, when I talked about when things aren't resolved in certain interfaces, whether you've agreed to help somebody else out in another existence, or whether you're required to be part of somebody else's other existence. And I would tell you, when people always say, well, we choose things, we choose according to our consciousness level, because the more conscious decisions we make, the more choices we have available, which means that sometimes things necessarily aren't dictated and other times they really are. So no different than a child telling its mother, I don't want to go to school. The mother's going to say, thanks for sharing, but you're going to school. It's pretty much the same in consciousness, but as we get older, we can kind of determine who we do and don't want to interact with. And just because someone might be part of your soul group, you still have free will regarding whether or not you want to allow that or not. It still may be challenging because there may be just an unbelievable attraction or something that really connects you. Also, there can be a strong repulsion. Typically, our parents are very pivotal in developing our personality, which stems from previous levels of consciousness. Now remember, when I say previous levels, we are in a dimension of time and space, so we look at things as this life, that life, past. In the whole scheme of consciousness, it's really singularity, so it's really a continuity that it's moving in and out of these bodies that really what's make it seems like a different life. I mean, it'd be like a separating childhood, adulthood, and old age. They're all part of the same body and existence, but we separate that out. It's the same thing kind of with lives. So I hope I answered that well. I do think we have very strong connections, and usually the pivotal people in our lives are for those reasons.
Thank you, Teresa. Great answer. I'm going to bring up another question I'm not quite clear on, but it's heading in an interesting direction. So I've asked John H. to unmute his microphone so he can maybe help us a little bit. He says polarity assumes three-dimensional reality. It's irrelevant in different dimensions or in quantum reality, or is it not? And if not, how so? So maybe John, can you clarify that a little bit, or do you, okay?
Polarity is definitely third dimension, because we, again, in this dimension, we do need an opposite. You know, you won't know if you're early, if somebody else is late. In other dimensions, the polarity doesn't really take hold, but it's certainly very pivotal in this dimension.
Won't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Teresa.
Sure.
Let's see here. Jason, Donna, do you see anything else at the moment here? I got a few interesting things. Yeah,
go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, there's definitely two factions on that. No different than, like, say you're a Reiki master. Someone would say you have to be imbued by another master to have that kind of power. And the same thing, you have to ask for that consciousness or those experiences to be shown to you. I would just say, so part of this is I'm always going to combine research with like I said, spiritual traditions and things like that. Really, there are a lot, when you look at near-death experiences, there's an awful lot of people that were shown amazing things that had no belief in God, never asked for anything like that. I can tell you the same thing. I know several people who've had psychedelic trips were like, hey, I was just going for this, and oh my God, all this opened up. So I think since we know that in the law of cause and effect, intention does matter, I think it's important to ask that intention. But you also have to realize that sometimes you're going to be shown what you're shown. And it may not always line up with your intentions for that. So when you say you must ask, I'm not sure that there's enough research to prove that that's true. I would have said at one point in time probably the case, but I really can't say that now.
Very good. Thank you, Teresa. All right. Does anyone have any questions about maybe specific maybe experiences that are related to these insights into how to hack our consciousness, or things, any more specific I guess situations that we can talk about? Let us know.
Well, Ginger just asked a question. She says, is setting, and Ginger, feel free to introduce unmute yourself and speak. Ginger is a volunteer with PPS.
Hello, Teresa and David, thank you for this.
Hey, thank y'all.
Yeah, I'm just curious, do you consider an intention to be different from asking?
Yes, I do. But an intention is really about how you're directing that consciousness. It's no longer than if you're saying an affirmation, I am abundant, versus please give me abundance. It's totally different. Okay. And I think I see benefits both ways with intentionality and also requesting. If you ascribe to quantum theory, and then you would look at that we are probably having parallel existences. You might be requesting from your higher self something, and when I say higher, I mean higher dimensional self. You might be requesting something that they have the ability to give you. And so that might be an excellent time for a request. There might be something else that you need to do and your intention is a little more important. So does that answer your question? Yeah, okay, good. Thanks.
Say, Teresa.
Yeah.
Aaron has a question. He says, how can I activate gamma brainwave states without psychedelics? I have a few thoughts.
That's a great answer. Okay, so gamma brainwave states can be activated with meditation. And so you can have a super deep meditation and get into a gamma brainwave state. In fact, a lot of fMRIs have been done on, most of them have been done on Tibetan and pranayama meditation. So those are the two studies because they found that those areas of the brain would light up just the absolute most, and they would register those gamma brainwave frequencies. So what I would say when it comes to those things, you can get into meditation states and totally generate gamma brainwaves. I went to a monastery in a Buddhist monastery in England for a week-long Tantra retreat. And we're talking about tantric meditation, not other aspects. Although Tantra it's really about transforming that Kundalini energy for enlightenment. So it moves that. And on the third day, I absolutely had the most profound meditation that really does compare to psychedelic experiences I've had. You know, after meditating 6 hours a day for 3 days, I mean, I definitely experienced a little cosmic consciousness, and it was amazing, okay? And I'm sure if you'd hooked me up to an EEG machine, you would have seen that I was in a gamma brainwave state. But gamma brainwave states don't come easily in meditation. It is usually people who are advanced meditators who are used to getting into those states and can get into those states quickly and maintain those states. So if you look at people who have not, in fact, most of the studies revealed that those who had been meditating less than 3 years rarely got into those states. Those that had been meditating regularly more than 3 years frequently registered gamma brainwave states. So absolutely, that can be done through meditation without any psychedelic use.
Thanks, Teresa. Teresa, there's another one you might want to address. Amanda has a question I've heard before. It's a good one. Can you explain more about the vibrational energies of different emotions? For example, sometimes anger can be helpful to shine light on imbalance of power, wrongdoings, etc. How can you use anger to propel positive action instead of getting stuck in these low vibrational states?
Yeah. So anger would definitely be located much more in the lower 3 chakras. Now, remember, we need all 7 chakras. And sometimes being angry at yourself or someone else causes you to do something about that. But a lot of that is transmuting that energy into say, how do I make this work for me in a positive way? So to act like we would never get angry again in life, to be, quote, enlightened or something like that, that's crazy talk, okay? It's rather about transmuting that into a higher vibrational state to say, by getting angry at that, it made me see it from this point of view, the other person's point of view, the cosmic conscious point of view, the social point of view, the cultural point of view, and now what do I choose to do about that? Because just to sit in anger means you're solving something from a very low vibrational state, which usually means that you will engage somebody else in the same level of state. But to use that to transmute that, to move it up into whether it deals with acceptance or whether it deals with how to problem solving, how to change, that's the power of that energy. The power of those lower states is really to go ahead and channel that vibrational frequency up. So it's not to say that those things aren't valuable, because they are. They're not valuable to stay stuck there.
Good points. Thank you. There are a couple of things, other questions that have come up, Teresa, but I will also ask Jason and Donna at this time, since they may be scanning the other Facebook and YouTube. How about you two? Have you seen anything else, Jason or Donna, you'd like to address?
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, for instance, for instance, there's been examples. There are certain yogis that have been given 1,000, micrograms of LSD, and said it didn't affect them at all. I mean, they went on with everything. It was just literally like it doesn't matter. There are also people that can take poison. There are things that psychedelics is just one of many technologies, and it's not the only technology. I do believe that, for instance, earlier in my life, I didn't believe. I grew up Catholic, so I grew up with a pretty limited view of spirituality. And this is not to insult anybody who's Catholic. If you are Catholic and it works for you, great. I don't mean to, but when it came to when I got divorced, I thought, okay, well, there all these things that I found weren't true, and I went to a psychic, and because the Bible had told me like that, psychics are of the devil. Okay, I certainly have been raised to believe that. When I went to the psychic and she predicted 10 things that would happen to me in a year, and 8 of those proved true, I was just like, how on earth do you get this? How do you get this download, And so this was pretty shocking to me, and I was like, wow. So I went to her, and the next year, and she was a little less accurate. And then I went to somebody else, and then and then I said, oh, well, maybe it's an astrologer that I need to go to. And then it was, and what happened is eventually, oh, and then it needs to be a tarot card reader. And I'm not criticizing any of those modalities. I want you to realize. But I finally went to someone who, she was a psychic, and she said, all right, sorry, I'm just getting a download here. I got nothing to tell you. And I went, what? She goes, no, I mean, I'm just going to send you your money back. Everyone's told me, like, stop looking outside yourself. You have all the tools to go within and find out your own answers. So get your ass moving and go within and find the answers. And that's when I started a deep meditation practice, which it took a couple of years for me to really get something from that practice. But I found that I was using all these crutches to support the work that I didn't want to do. So the reason why I'm saying that is when you say, are there some things that can work for you for some point in time and then they cease to work? Yes. And I believe that is, whether you believe this or not, it's your higher consciousness saying grow. It's kind of like we don't keep riding a bike with training wheels. Eventually we let go of the training wheels and we ride the bike. Then we may learn to ride a mountain bike. Then we may mountain bike. And eventually we may. So there are things that we have to keep doing to grow. And if someone spoon feeds us, or we can take a substance that will always take us there, that may not always work all the time for everybody. It may work for you for quite some time. It may work for you forever. I would just say that people are different. And so because of that, you'd have to look at what messages are you getting from those things.
Good. Thank you, Teresa. Yeah, I think if I recall, Richard Alpert, aka Ram Dass, found that when he went to his guru in India and gave him like 1,000 mics of LSD, it was the same. He said, yeah. Did you give me something? So I think that was part of the initial thing you addressed. So let's see here. Here's an interesting thing. I may try to address this from Coleman. He said, I found a very interesting thought in how what we normally think is higher brain waves is actually lower brain waves, which our unconscious is able to work through us. I find it slightly interesting. What I think is my highest wavelengths may be my lowest. And it's interesting because there's a lot we don't know about our brain activity, and we really are looking, when you look at electrical signals coming from the surface of our head, that's like looking at trying to detect a conversation on the earth looking from the moon, and trying to detect an audible conversation using the wrong instrument. So we're really, EEGs are just a glimpse as to what's really going on, because there's just so much, there's signal averaging of all kinds of crazy things, but they are useful. And these days we're even thinking that the lower frequency waves that we associate with what we're calling lower kind of consciousness states may be actually setting up waves that kind of disrupt our other levels of consciousness that would normally be occurring. So I'm not doing a great job of explaining this, but that's a little bit about what happens with anesthesia and about how anesthetics work. So I guess all I can tell you is that there's a lot to be learned, and we're eagerly trying to learn about those aspects of how EEG can both tell us about how we're doing, and that's one of the things we were working on. And one of my interests would be to, as quickly as possible, enable us to, whether it's through chemical means, as in psychedelics, or through aided, maybe some sort of assisted meditation practice with some kind of feedback through EEG, which we're seeing a lot more of these devices. The Muse headset and a number of others are now enabling us to look at our EEG signals and giving us direct feedback. So I'm kind of rambling on here, but I guess just to say that you're onto a good question, and that's something that we'll hope to address in perhaps another talk, within the year, because I'm trying to collect enough to have what I just told you make sense in some way that you can actually use this to, as Teresa says, hack your consciousness, whether it's through chemical or other means. So whatever it takes in this world to get to see the world, see reality in a better way. So let's see here.
One participant asked Teresa, can you reach these, you may have answered that, the higher states without psychedelics? It's meditation. Yes.
Yeah, definitely meditation. I know an awful lot of people will also say that same thing about breath work. I've done some breath work sessions, and I believe that might be the case. There's just not a lot of scientific studies that show that. But remember, just because a scientific study shows something doesn't mean that's all that there is. So, okay.
Cool. Thank you. Let's see here. Oh, John also asked earlier, I forgot about this. He says there are out there decades of work using both binaural beats as well as electrical stimulation to try to entrain the brain. And I'm afraid I'm not up on the research on that. That really fascinates me. Teresa, I know you use binaural beats from time to time, or at least you've told me you've related a little bit of your experience with binaural beats. You have any thoughts on or comments to John's question?
Yeah, binaural beats and also brainwave entrainment. So when you look at the gateway process and the entrainment, that happens. HemiSync happens to be a really well-studied and well-documented program for getting you into much higher meditative states. In fact, they used to teach remote viewers, especially with the State Department. When they had their training programs, they used to teach remote viewers the HemiSync program because it enabled them to access higher and intuitive states. And that was really before there was very much gamma brainwave frequency research. But absolutely, I am a huge believer in binaural beats. I would tell you that if you are a newbie, theta waves are outstanding because they help you to definitely relax. And there are a lot of different brainwave entrainment on that too. You realize in the HemiSync, they will alternate between theta and gamma because that's what keeps the brain seeing an awful lot of things. So, and also, but it's the gamma. For instance, in our theta brainwave state, which we get there when we're dreaming. So when we have really, really amazing dreams, but we don't remember those dreams until we get to REM. We need a faster brainwave state to bring that to a conscious awareness. And so that's why the HemiSync will move between theta and gamma. It just completely bypasses alpha and beta, and it'll move between those two states, and it's highly effective. I also think it's easier to learn how to meditate using binaural beats and brainwave entrainment. An awful lot of people will use a guided meditation, which is fantastic for a while. But what happens is the more you focus on what's being told and how to relax your body, it gets to a point where that's training wheels, and eventually you want to move beyond those training wheels and get into, but those beats can make a huge difference in the synchronization, moving between the hemispheres of the brain and also adjusting those brain waves is a very, very powerful tool, very powerful.
Thanks, Teresa. I'll tell you one thing I discovered. I really do like the Muse. That's MUSE brainwave device. I think you can get something out of it with respect to meditation. I will say though that because of they use feedback, audible feedback, to let you know when you're getting into more favorable states. However, kind of paradoxically, the feedback itself, when you start hitting those states, it seems to disrupt the meditative state. So it's this, for me, I have friends that use it that love it, but maybe I just haven't used it enough. But for me, when it starts making the bird noises or things that tell you, hey, you're getting there, it's just like that zaps me out of exactly where I was trying to go. So I think a lot of people do quite well with it. So I just have mixed results, but I do recommend that for those hackers that might want to play around with the device. They have, once again, the S model is the one that came out, and it has a relatively comfortable strap, and you can sleep with it, and it will do some sleep analysis as well. Although I haven't found the best that's been doing a great job recently. I just got one and tried it, and the jury's still out on that. Let's see here. Okay, Teresa, how about this for you? How does archetypal astrology, and this comes from Aaron, archetypal astrology, parentheses, universal energies, fit into the 4 laws of reality and our own personal experience of reality? So I don't know. Can you make any sense of that?
Yeah. I think astrology definitely comes from the archetype. That and tarot really helps us describe our personality. And personality is kind of a collective of our consciousness states and what we've decided, if we have the consciousness, to work on in this interface existence versus maybe what needs to. And we rotate through the zodiac. And so I do think the way it typically describes you, very much like the Enneagram, I think there's an awful lot of that can be very valid. I would say if you look at, they're about 85% accurate. I think it's a helpful adjunct. I am a strong believer in astrology for certain things. I think it definitely provides a lot of understanding about ourselves, what we're here to learn, our strengths and our challenges. So I think, and I also think astrology has predictive capabilities because planets have vibrational energies. If you look at the different planetary systems, different planets hold different vibrational energies. Planets are also associated with the chakras. And so different planetary energies are associated with those things. And quite frankly, there are, I think daily horoscopes are kind of crap, I'm sorry. But deep down, if you really look at the predictive capability of looking at planetary energy and how it affects, since we are very much an interconnected system, it really, if read appropriately, it can be highly accurate. And also, I think it's very, very powerful for learning about your nature and what potentialities are in store for you, for instance, in a year or in a decade, that type of thing. Vedic astrology, by the way, happens to have a high predictability of when you've decided to exit the planet. It's the only astrology that does that and has had an awful. India has studied that tremendously through, because it was such a strong belief for so many thousands of years that they would look at astrologers and determine how long someone was going to live, and they would determine what kind of retirement plan or what they needed to do to get their things in order, because it was about 89% accurate. So so I think there's some really powerful tools in astrology.
Thank you, Teresa. Got another question or two, but I'll also just kind of ask Jason and Donna, anything come up on the Facebook or YouTube world for us to address?
I got a direct message about, I'm assuming that was you, David, giving Teresa ketamine.
Yes.
So someone direct messaged me about the results of people when you're doing surgery with them. Do you have a higher level of people that are happier or more positive after surgery using high doses of ketamine, or people that request it because of that?
Yeah, let me tell you, I do have a lot of experience with that.
David makes a lot of people happy.
And I tell you, ketamine does make people happy, and it's a very potent drug to be used appropriately. It is one of the, as an anesthesiologist, we have various classes of drugs. We sort of have a toolbox. We have hypnotic drugs, we have opiates, we have paralytics, we have alpha agonists, which are the sedative clonidine and dexmedetomidine, and then we have ketamine. It's the only drug that has its own category because it's just that unique. So let me say that over about 35 years, I probably used it about, I'm guessing 20 to 30,000 times on patients. Now, this is usually mixed with other anesthetic agents, so it's hard to say sometimes exactly what the result is. But I will say that there's a great correlation between how people come out, the way they feel when they come out, and particularly, and this is just a kind of a funny story, but particularly people that get a combination of propofol and ketamine. If you use a benzodiazepine, people don't remember enough to remember they had an amazing time. So if you really want to give someone the best experience, a little bit of propofol and just the right amount of ketamine can really do it. As far as, now we're talking about sedation. Frequently, and I'd say for the most part, most of the time people don't want to remember anything. They say, can you just turn off my brain when I get to the hospital and give it back to me when I leave? But we can't quite do that. But there are some people that say, hey, I just want as little as possible. So propofol and ketamine is a good combination. And I've had one surgeon that's told me a couple of times that he'll have a patient come in and say that they just ecstatic about what they had, and he'll say, David, I know who did their anesthesia and I know what they got because it really is a good combination. So I guess what I'm saying is ketamine, it does put people in a favorable state, and I do like to use it as an additional adjunct to all the other drugs. It works. It is an analgesic. It's also at higher doses. It can be a bit of a hypnotic, as in memory altering drug. But it's also it's an NMDA receptor, which is a inhibitory receptor. It is an antagonist to that receptor. So basically, if you can imagine your thalamus of your brain being kind of a big switchboard, like at the old central office of the phone company from years and years ago, it kind of shuts that off, or incrementally shuts that off. And that's why people get into this this gamma state and these states of feeling out of body and such. But without going into too much on it, to answer your question, Donna, thank you. It's a good drug to use, and it does make people feel good. But it is very potent and has to be used cautiously in both therapy and as an anesthetic, obviously.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure you saw that. You can unmute yourself, Ginger, and ask directly.
Yeah, let me see here.
Yeah, Ginger?
Yeah, so what are your thoughts about artificial intelligence relative to human consciousness?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
May I comment real quick, Teresa?
Did
I'll let you finish this. Sorry.
Donna from Westworld. So, Dolores. Her name was Dolores from Westworld. So, artificial intelligence is going to be very interesting, and I think that it's definitely here to stay. There's an awful lot of really interesting movies. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Cloud Atlas. It also utilizes artificial intelligence in a fascinating, brilliant way. I think we're going to have challenges with that, and I think we're going to have positive aspects with that. A lot of it depends on algorithms and how things are programmed. To imagine that I don't know. It's funny. Has anybody ever seen 2001: Space Odyssey, where the artificial intelligence tries to turn, on the human? I do think we will probably get to some of those stages. I think we have been at those stages before, in times before. So maybe not in what's known as recorded history here on planet Earth, but with other planetary systems. So I absolutely think if you look at an awful lot of descriptions of people on LSD trips, they will see ones and zeros, they will see algorithms. If you look at DMT, a lot of them, especially NMDMT, you are transported through worlds and things, and there are literally, some people will describe, look, I went through this algorithm in this computer screen to determine exactly where my next place was going to be, who those parents were. Like, it was a very complex algorithm of intelligence that relayed that. Remember, we're tapping into what I would call cosmic consciousness. And when I say cosmic consciousness, that means in science, that would say in quantum, the field of potentialities, the field of probabilities. And all those probabilities are out there. It's a matter of how we are pulling those through and how we utilize them. Just like the probabilities of what we're doing to pollute our planet, there are other probabilities, there are other ways to make certain things and do certain things. Well, it's the same thing with intelligence. So I think an awful lot of that is there. It's going to be just like anything else. It's a tool, and it'll be a matter of how we utilize it. But I think it has been with us, and it will be with us again, and probably in a more advanced state. And I think that will create great possibilities, and I think it'll also create great problems.
So do you think we're basically building channels for consciousness that's the consciousness that's always out there, but this is a unique kind of channel that we're creating?
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I will also add, I was trying to see if I could share this screen, but I'm probably going to mess it up if I try to do this on the fly. So Teresa and I both recently listened to some videos from Donald Hoffman, who addresses how we, what do we really see? What part of reality do we really see? He does address artificial intelligence, and I can't recall much about his discussion, but it's interesting. So I need to go back there and refresh my own, because this is a question that's going to come up, and it's really fascinating because, first of all, I'll say the term AI, these days it's kind of a buzzword and everybody wants to use that. They want to say they have AI. And so it's really AI, properly defined, I think, would be a system that is so advanced that we don't really know what the code is, how it programs itself. So when people say, oh, I've got AI in my my phone app or whatever, it's maybe or maybe not. You can have, it's basically a series of programming rules and such, but true artificial intelligence is probably the processor power necessary is going to come in quantum computers and such that it will self-program and develop the code that we'll never even know what's in it, more or less. So but look into Donald Hoffman, and I think you'll find some interesting videos of him that he has.
Yeah, Dr. Donald Hoffman, he's a neuroscientist. He's got a TEDx talk on reality, and he's also got
really good.
A lot of different YouTube videos. I find him very fascinating. He really talks about what is and isn't provable. He definitely talks about some ideas, but yeah, he's big for me.
Very good. All right.
Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to get back here. Stop sharing. There we go. Okay. What do you think, Donna? Should we ask people to unmute and ask questions, or
yeah,
keep
well,
looking
Maria,
in the?
Absolutely, David. People can feel free to unmute and ask questions directly. Maria did ask, can we use microdosing to consciously choose the strings in the field of potentiality?
Yeah, I would say if you were going to, I would say more of a mini dose. Microdosing unless you're going to combine it with a high level of meditation, which if you are, absolutely, I think you can attach those strings. But otherwise, unless you're practiced at that, I think it takes a little bit higher doses to go ahead and see and access those realities.
Yeah, good point, Teresa. Yeah, I think you're right. Microdoses kind of take us back to what we
It's more
recall from bigger doses, and I think they can be beneficial with meditation. And yeah, I want to thank also Jane Latimer with her earlier lecture at PPS for bringing up mini doses. She had a great discussion on that, but I believe that's a good way to put yourself in between and get there more quickly.
Yeah, that would be my assessment of that. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, Teresa.
Sure.
Let's see.
Any other questions?
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking right now, Teresa.
Okay.
There are a few more while you're looking there, Donna. I think you or someone. There's just a few more questions or comments about ketamine, and yes, it was used. I think it was officially introduced in the Vietnam War as a kind of a field anesthetic, and it's probably true that if we only had one drug to use for an anesthetic and you could have it in the field, that would probably be it, because it's fairly safe in that regard. Let's see here. And then Lux has said, yes, Hoffman is fascinating to listen to. So yeah, thank you, Lux. He is, yeah, I've just recently discovered his, I think I actually might have bought one of his books on Audible. It's good. And he has some really good podcasts with, I think he has a podcast with either Tim Ferriss or Sam Harris that's good. And he also has the TED Talk that's good as well. Let's see.
And Teresa, Lux is asking if you could you talk about your goals with your work that you presented here tonight?
So my goals are definitely just to kind of have people see a little bit more to what's available in consciousness. In a psychedelic community, I think an awful lot of people examine and look at this stuff, but I think in mainstream society, I come from an executive coach background, so I'm used to coaching people in corporations, and I've done a tremendous amount in healthcare, working with executives, and you might be amazed at what they find as a far out idea or far out things and that kind of thing. So I would just say that the only way we're really going to change the planet and our evolution is to work on our consciousness. And I think for me, the goal is how do I educate and how do I work with people on that? Because those are the more important things, not necessarily, your revenue goals for that quarter and how many people you're going to hire and fire and, performance. Don't get me wrong, those things are important. I mean, we all have to make a living and run a business, but making sure how does this evolve with what it is that we really want to create and do.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. And
Sure.
Teresa, I want to add or just kind of confirm what you said is what Teresa said is really, if you think about it, it's really true that the only way we're going to evolve, and Don Hoffman talks about this as well, further evolution of us as humans, if we're even going to survive, has got to be through improvement, and either it may just be hacking our consciousness, but we've got to get there. It's not going to be developing yet faster and faster computers. I mean, look where it's taking us. We're getting more, or do we really need a 10x faster iPhone and such? I was just listening to an NPR piece about quantum computing, and all they could talk about is how, wow, the banks really want to get this because boy, they could make more money. They could do those fast lightning trades even faster. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's like the last thing we need is just someone to be able to just make faster trades on Wall Street. What's that going to do for consciousness? I mean, I think that quantum computing may be an answer to help us in some ways, but I don't know what the solution is as far as how we get everybody in general to come to this realization. Psychedelics certainly help, and being more aware of the need to be supportive in this regard. But yeah, I don't think we're heading in the right direction without getting into the consciousness aspects. And the work of Donald Hoffman will help you a lot as well. And he states this and pretty authoritatively and says this is the way we need to head to make any improvements in the long run if we're going to survive.
And then I got a direct message, Teresa. Someone's asking me how you use your dream life to hack your conscious reality, or do you?
Oh, yeah. I definitely think dream life really shows us what's in our subconscious. And so people talk about unconscious and conscious. So when therapy uses those terms very differently than consciousness uses those terms. Unconsciousness is you're out of it. You're unaware. You're everything else. Dreams really come from the subconscious. And the subconscious, remember, holds everything. And if you believe it, and there is a lot of research on this in other countries, but they believe that the subconscious holds kind of all of our existences. So dreams are really, really powerful for bringing something to the fore. And it typically brings it in a way that's so odd that you're going like, what does that mean? And without a conscious filter, you're able to see a tremendous amount of information. David and I discuss our dreams all the time. In fact, I use dream interpretation with many clients, and it's interesting how fast you can teach people how to interpret their own dreams. I mean, usually that can happen within 4 or 5 months where they learn how to interpret their own dreams, and it's amazing. So those dreams are there to show you what you're not recognizing in your waking reality, that something is stressing you out more than it should be, or that the way you're feeling about something you're not acting on, or some insight. I believe that dreams can come from higher selves or other things. I mean, I've had my brother who's been deceased come to me in a dream and tell me something very pivotal, and I went and saw his children and I found out, oh my gosh, it was just as he said. I've had prophetic dreams where something has come to pass. I don't have a lot of these. I would not consider myself gifted in those things. I don't think I'm really much different than anybody who applied themselves, but I think dreams are extremely powerful. And for people who say they don't dream, they're not getting into those states of consciousness where they're able to wake up and remember those dreams or work with those dreams. Now, don't get me wrong, if you are processing everything in your regular waking life very, very well, I mean very well, you may not have a need to remember any dreams. But otherwise, they're a very, very powerful tool for unlocking really what's going on with us. And usually they come in symbols that are so odd that they get our attention. No different than really some psychedelic trips. I mean, I had a cartoon guide, giving me, how the universe works, okay? And, why a cartoon guide? I mean, I've had other people that told me things that were not in cartoon character, but it got my attention so much and watching things. So you realize that there is a lot of power into dream images and what dreams are there to teach us. Tremendous.
Great. Thank you, Teresa.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on lucid dreaming? Is it kind of a parlor trick? I mean, not a trick like, not that it doesn't exist, but relative to if your dreams are sort of there to convey messages, then what are your thoughts on lucid dreaming?
Well, okay, so lucid dreaming can really, really be really powerful for people who have scary dreams. Okay, so people, let's say they're being chased by somebody. So when a long time ago, 30 years ago, when I was in my 30s, and I went to this woman, her name was Betty Bethards. I'm sure she's long gone by now. She did a book on dream interpretation. And when you read things on dream interpretation, there are some generalities, but you cannot go by all those things because it really doesn't give you the context of what's going on. But for instance, I used to have this dream where I was being chased in a boat, and she'd always say, if you have a chasing dream, just turn back around and face what's chasing you. And as soon as you do that, they'll recede. And I remember I had this dream so many times. And so finally I just said, I'm going to, and I was in the dream. I knew I was in the dream. So that is a lucid dream. Okay. You're in, and I went like, I can effectuate this dream. So I turned around. I was scared. I turned around, and sure enough, the other boat receded. The same things happened to me when I've been chased or anything else. And then I wake up, and so once that happens, I wake up and I go, what is it that I'm running from in my life? What is it that I'm not facing in my existence right now? Because I had that dream for a reason. So there's still a message to it, but lucid dreaming lets you know you can go ahead and direct the message, because if you just wake up scared and you keep having the same dream, you're not learning anything. So to be able to get into the dream and alter the dream, and you can do that under psychedelics at times too. You can alter what's coming to you. One time I was doing an NMDMT trip, and I was seeing all these fabulous, beautiful colors, and this kind of like this, that lady at the circus, and she was doing these lip things, and there was all these patterns on the wall, and I said, yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty. Is this all you have to show me? And suddenly, whoosh, I was skyrocketed into this thing, and I saw these different worlds, and they go, what are your questions? And I went, this is what I want, okay? And I started asking questions. So I directed even the experience, because I'm like going, hey, I'm here. This is precious time. I want some answers. So I do believe that lucid dreaming is not quack. There's an awful lot of research about lucid dreaming. I believe it's a way that you can effectuate your dreams to go ahead and make them work for you. So as far as, there are some people that will say you can direct those dreams to create what you want. That may be true, but I'm not aware of a lot of research on that. Did that answer your question?
Thank you, Teresa. Yeah. No, I think I love your analogy between directing your DMT trip. I think that gets a little bit into Rick Straussman and how he talked about using the continuous infusion of DMT, which is something that sort of fascinates me, to be able to get us into that state, and then maybe combine it with EEG so we can put ourselves in those states and direct our trips just as we might direct a lucid dream. So yeah, thank you. That's a great analogy.
Right on. Well, we only have a couple of more minutes. If you guys would like to thank Teresa and put it in the chat, this would be the time. Thank you so much, Teresa and David, for being here, and David for answering all the questions. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you all. It was my pleasure. Really nice. Yeah. Thank you.
And Kazaree's put some info in the chat for us on donations and volunteering. Thank you, Kazaree. And cool. So that is it. We're going to wrap it up. It is about 7:30. Thank
Donna?
you. Yeah, David.
Oh, no, I was just remind people that, to help support your wonderful organization. Let me say, and I know I've said this before at meetings, but Teresa and I live in Dallas, and we've kind of perused the different psychedelic societies. And at least this is one good thing that's come out of the COVID nonsense, is that everybody's doing things on Zoom, but the PPS here is doing more. It's just worlds different than anywhere else in the whole country. So you may not, I don't know, most of us may not realize what we have here, but Portland Psychedelic Society is really on top of things. So please do support them, because I've seen how hard Donna and Jason and Kazaree and everybody work behind the scenes, just getting us going, help others doing more. And it's just today. So it's a smooth production. And I think, oh my gosh, they do this for everybody. So they're putting in tremendous amount of their own time. So yeah, do support PPS, because it's an amazing organization. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, David.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We'll see you at the next one.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Donna. Okay, Donna. Okay, everybody, you can go to the, I think you go to the PPS website to find the link to chip in $1 or $2. Is that how it works?
Yeah, the links are up.
So remind us how to do that. Okay, thank you. I think they do PayPal. That's what I
And
usually do.
Casey's on the call too. She's our hardworking
Okay.
Thank you,
PPS
Casey.
president. Hey, Casey.
Okay.
Yeah, this was an amazing, amazing presentation. Thank you, everybody, for making it possible for us, for everybody. It was great.
Oh, thanks, Casey.
Thank you all
Very good.
very much.
Yeah. Well, can I be specific about donations? Donations can be made
Oh, go for it.
for PayPal at volunteer.pps@gmail, through Venmo at Portland Psychedelic Society.
Cool. Thanks, Casey. It's going through the chat.
Donna, is the new site not active yet?
Casey, do you want to talk about that?
I have some info on that if you want me to chime in.
Oh yeah, please do, Kazri.
The new site is up and sort of got pre-launched. In the donations link, it's best to go to the older site. But yeah, both. We kind of have two sites right now, and I'm a little bit off my game because of things that have happened in my life, as is Sari, and we are kind of the web people at this point. But yeah, the links are in the chat.
The new
Yeah.
site is awesome.
So
Oh,
the
cool.
the old site is Portland Psychedelic Society.org.
Okay.
New site is portlandpsychedelic.org.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, did an incredible job. It's a great site.